Well, welcome back to Genesis Does What Nintendon't, right here on Mr. MegaManFan's channel, and I am Mr. MegaManFan, and this is Quad Challenge, which, according to Wikipedia, is adapted from an arcade game named Four Tracks, which I have to freely admit I've never played. This is copyright 1989, 1991, so that must be the arcade game's date versus the home console's conversion update, and it is a Namco game, or Namcot in some regions. Let's pop this in the old analog Mega SG and see what Genesis does, because this definitely was never on any Nintendo system, virtual console, or otherwise. It is a Genesis Mega Drive exclusive, and it's a racing game. Oh, it's a glitchy racing game. Glitch game, I'm the glitch game, and you can't get me, glitch game. Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to pull this one out and restart it because it's frozen now. Thanks, Glitch Gremlin. You're a real pleasure. So, I'm going to have to remove it, turn the power off, reinsert it, maybe a second try. Hopefully, I won't need to get out the Q-tips and the rubbing alcohol, but you never know with these old cartridges. They're not always clean when you try them the first time, but we'll give it a second shot. I reprogrammed my analog's setup options so that it goes straight to the menu without displaying the graphics logo at the beginning. Just saves us a little time, and it was worth it in this case because we're getting straight into the action with 500 cc's of a liquid-cooled two-stroke engine, a rear aluminum swing arm, and most importantly, throttle, because you gotta go fast, right? The hot race is going to start. I wonder if that's a literal translation from Japanese to English. Radical air fires up the crowd. I'm going to guess it's probably not. But there it is, the title screen for Quad Challenge. Now choose your race and enter your name or not. I'm just going to race. So, it's an off-roading game, which I didn't know before playing it, so I've already learned something today. And I'm going to tell you something else I've learned about it by doing a little research online. It is considered to be one of, if not the first off-road racing games made for a home console. It came out 10 years before ATV Off-Road Fury on the PlayStation 2, but according to the Wikipedia author, who seems to have a little bit of bias here, it is a niche genre game because THQ discontinued their MX vs. ATV series, and then in a really loaded statement that, man, if this was a political article, somebody would get yelled at for it. Quote, even prior to the cancellation of MX vs. ATV, driving an ATV around a closed-circuit track never appealed much to the mainstream audience of gamers. Now, if that isn't the loaded mother of all statements, I don't know what is. Now, obviously, I'm not going to have the fastest lap between me and my bottom half of the screen competitor here because I didn't even know which buttons to hit to accelerate and shift gears, so I was already down a leg before I even started. But that's what you get when you have a loose cartridge with no box or manual. And there's a lot of different things you can do wrong as you're going around this track. You can wipe out, you can spin out, you can crash. It's more challenging than you would think. You've got to manage your throttle very carefully going around turns. You've got to shift from low to high at the right time so you maximize your speed boost. And you can't drift too far when you go around the tracks. So you need to let off the throttle for that too, or else you'll hit the signs and the barriers on the outside. So lots of different things can screw you up here. And I'm doing a pretty good job of showing you just about every way that you can screw up in one game. So I think I'll have to give this a second try. But you know what? I'm already hooked in. I know the Wikipedia says that this was a niche genre that was never very popular with mainstream gamers, but I'm quite enjoying this. Sometimes when you pick out these random games to do a YouTube series, you get a real dud, or you get a real poorly designed game like Socket, or you get something that's just instantly, instinctively, intuitively fun. I would classify Quad Challenge as being that sort of game. Although, again, the somewhat biased article considers this a poor selling game. I mean, they're just loading up with the negative adjectives here. Let me read a little more from this article since it is so inherently biased. Summary: the game was released with little commercial fanfare and it never made major sales figures. Wow. Where are they getting those sales figures from? I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong, but just that sentence alone says to me somebody despised this game with a passion. Like, they got it for Christmas and they were like, oh man, I got a Genesis game. Oh, it's Quad Challenge. Mom, why didn't you get me Sonic? Why didn't you get me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Why didn't you get me Mortal Kombat? You got me Quad Challenge. And then the kid throws a tantrum and starts crying and throwing things all over the room. And then he gets sent up to bed and told to think about what he's done. You know, that never seemed very effective to me. When I was told, go to your room and think about what you've done, I was like, okay, sweet. I got my boombox up there. I got my Isaac Asimov books. I got my Commodore 64 computer. Yeah, I'll go up there and think about what I did. And then they finally caught on to that and they're like, and no using the computer while you're in your room thinking about what you've done. I was like, oh man, they figured me out. They knew that was punishment. So then the next one was go sit in the corner and think about what you've done. Now, that's a little more effective because you don't have a computer in the corner. So that worked a little better. Anyway, speaking of working a little better, I seem to be getting the hang of this. And since my performance is improving here, why don't I take this opportunity to go back and look at the wiki and see if they actually had anything good to say about this game while I try to wipe my opponent off the road by sliding into him going around this turn. Let's see here. Actual recorded human speech is used to count down the racers before the start of the race. Well, that's certainly true. We've already heard that in my gameplay footage. The player has 2 chances to win before receiving a game over. Game over, yeah! Just like in pole position, there is a lap timer as well as a game timer. Finishing each lap extends the game timer like in most arcade-style racing games. Maybe that's why I'm enjoying Quad Challenge, because it actually reminds me of pole position, which was definitely one of my favorite games as a kid, both the Commodore 64 home version and the arcade version. Now, admittedly, the arcade version was a little more sophisticated with an actual gear shift and an accelerator pedal and a big old steering wheel, which was a little difficult for me to handle as a little kid, but sure didn't stop me from trying, especially if you got the rare chance to play one of those sit-down full cabs where you could actually sit your butt on a seat and use the steering pedal with your feet instead of having to stand in front of an upright cab and push the foot pedal. That was always a little harder, especially if you were a small kid like I was at the time. So those sit-down cabs were great, but they were too few and too far between. So ultimately, I spent a lot more time playing pole position on my computer at home, and I got pretty damn good at it. I don't know if it would have been a world record anywhere on this planet, Twin Galaxies, or any other kind of leaderboard that exists out there, but I felt like I had it almost mastered on the Commodore 64. But I don't quite have this game mastered yet because I'm still not winning. I did better, I didn't wipe out as much, but it's ultimately not enough to beat the computer player, so I'm not quite satisfied. Are you satisfied? No, I can do better than that. I know I can do better than that. And I'm going to keep playing until I get this down. While we're doing that, well, here's the game over, yeah. So, knew that was coming sooner or later. Let's look up this game that it was supposedly based on. What was it called? 4 Tracks, right? Let's see what this page has to say about the arcade game that this is based on. 4 Tracks is a racing arcade game released by Namco in 1989. Well, that does explain the 1989-1991 copyright dates. It was distributed by Atari Games in North America. The player must take control of 4 quad bikes: red for player 1, white for player 2, yellow for player 3, and green for player 4. And this picture, of the arcade flyer that's attached to the article actually shows a 4-player sit-down version. Now, in Quad Challenge, it doesn't look like you're riding bikes. It looks like you're riding four-wheelers. So they obviously changed a few things, including the fact that you can't sit down on a physical bike in front of your Sega Genesis. Did they ever actually make something like that? I know for Super Nintendo there were a couple of different things that you could actually sit on or sit in. I've seen Norm the Gaming Historian cover them. I've actually seen one in person, the exercise bike. I've seen it in somebody's collection in Missouri. Shout out to the Missouri Game Con, wish I could have been there. But back to this article. Players compete in an off-road race and they all have a preset amount of time in which to complete a full lap. But for each lap that is completed, the player's time is extended. Well, that seems familiar, doesn't it? However, if one of the players cannot manage to successfully complete his current lap before the time runs out, his or her game will instantly be over and the race will continue without him or her. The players must complete between 3 and 6 full laps of the track in order to win. The number is dependent on how the cabinets are set, as with Namco's final lap. The players will also encounter between 4 and 7 CPU-controlled bikes on the track, and the number is dependent on how many people are playing. 7 for 1 player, 6 for 2, 5 for 3, and 4 for 4. So this 4-tracks cab actually looks really cool. I would love to try it someday. I wonder if they have it at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester. I know Shane, aka Re-Rez, has been there, and he's played some pretty interesting arcade games that they have that have been preserved, such as a giant-sized Tetris with sticks bigger than your entire body. I mean, it's an incredible machine, giant Tetris. I would love to get my hands on that and play it, but I have to get out to Rochester first because I don't think I've seen it anywhere else. In fact, I think it was imported from Japan, if I remember his video correctly, because that was like one of those things to rejuvenate Tetris over there that I don't think ever would have seen quite the amount of mainstream popularity here that it did there. But some of those things do cross over, like the 4-player cocktail Pac-Man challenge cabs. Those ended up at Dave & Buster's, so you never know with these kind of things. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Funny that I reference Pac-Man considering we're playing a Namco game, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's see if I can complete this final lap in a fast enough time to defeat my computer-played opponent and get a worthy score to end this video on. I guess it's not really a score, a worthy finish, a worthy final time. Yeah, that's a worthy final time, under 3 minutes. I think that should be enough. I just saw the player drive in behind me, so yes, it was enough. And I finally won a lap, so now I feel like the challenge of Quad Challenge has been solved, or at least in this limited aspect. There's obviously more tracks, tournament races, all these different options you can see on the screen here, but I'll have to do that another day and another time, because that is the end of this week's episode of Genesis Does. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thank you as always for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.